Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call this regular meeting of Council of March 5th to order. Please stand for the national anthem. Okay, I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interests or general nature thereof. Okay, seeing none, we're going to no presentations. We're going to move right into our first delegation. Ms. Lynn Cunningham, if you would go up to the podium. Ms. Cunningham is the account manager, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, MPAC, Ontario's assessment system. And 10 minutes. I'll give you 1 minute when it's at 9.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for welcoming me. Like Mr. Mayor said, my area of responsibility includes the region of Niagara and its 12 lower municipalities, including Wainfleet, as well as the county of Haldimand and the county of Norfolk. And I've presented to the previous council, but I see lots of new faces, so congratulations. Today, my presentation is aimed to touch upon MPAC's roles and responsibilities within the property assessment system, a background on MPAC and the property assessment cycle, and assessment statistics for the Niagara region and what it means to you. This is what MPAC is proud to be about. MPAC's role is to correctly assess and classify all properties in Ontario, which is more than 5 million properties. Properties are classified according to their use as directed by the provincial regulations. There are 7 major property classes: residential, multi-residential, commercial, industrial, pipeline, farm, and managed forests. We have our property classes so that municipalities can determine which tax rate should apply to which properties. Annually, we prepare and deliver the assessment roll to municipalities by the second Tuesday after December 1st. That was December 11th for this year. We were ready and prepared even with postal unrest. MPAC staff update assessment values throughout the year, most commonly due to new construction, alterations or renovations to structures, and or classifications of information MPAC currently has on file. We regularly inform property owners of the changes by way of property assessment change notices and provide the municipalities the information by way of a supplementary or omitted assessment listing. This is delivered to the municipality monthly from the months of May through to November. In 2018, we added over $38 billion to the assessment roll provincially. In addition to making changes, we respond to assessment inquiries, including requests for reconsideration reviews. In Wainfleet, there are 3,857 properties, and for 2018, we only received 19 requests for reconsideration. All are complete, and only 3 filed so far in 2019, a big reduction for the 66 we received in 2017. Not many filed on the 3,357 properties that you do have. So what is MPAC? The Municipal Property Assessment Corporation is a not-for-profit corporation, which means we're a neutral party. We have 33 field offices across the province that are funded by all 444 municipalities. We're governed by a 13-member board of directors made up of 7 municipal, 4 taxpayer, and 2 provincial representatives. All board All members of the board are appointed by the Minister of Finance. MPAC is also the largest assessment jurisdiction in North America, whose assessors are trained experts in the field of valuation and apply accredited appraisal industry standards and best practices. MPAC is one of several components of the property assessment and taxation system. 2018 was an election year at the provincial and municipal levels. We have been providing information about MPAC to new councils to help you better understand our operations and our role in the property assessment and taxation system. Property assessment and taxes are a product of an integrated system involving MPAC, the provincial government, including the Assessment Review Board, the municipalities and taxpayers, which each have a distinct role and interest in the assessment and taxation process. Success of the system depends on all parties defining their responsibilities and working together effectively. MPAC is responsible for determining the current value assessments of over 5 million properties with an estimated total value of $2.78 trillion. The provincial government, the Ministries of Finance and Municipal Affairs and Housing, are the primary municipalities responsible for setting assessment and taxation legislation policies and determining the education tax rates. The province also operates an independent assessment appeal tribunal, the Assessment Review Board. Municipalities each year are required to make a host of decisions that shape the local property tax regime by affecting how the property tax burden is distributed across the assessment base. Some of you here tonight will be wearing two hats: regional representatives who set tax policy and municipal representative who set tax rates, and city staff will collect the taxes. Every 4 years, MPAC updates property assessments to reflect a legislative valuation date. For 2017 through 2020 taxation years, the legislative valuation date is January 1st, 2016, so what you could expect to sell your property for as of that date. In December of 2016, every property owner in Ontario received a property assessment notice with an estimate of property value as of that date. These assessed values have been and will be used by municipalities for the taxation years 17 through 20. Under the phase-in provision of the Assessment Act, an increase in assessed value is introduced and graduated over 4 years. A decrease in value is seen immediately. This means that although MPAC uses the prescribed legislation date, the increases are not fully felt or fully met till the 4th year of the phase-in, and the decreases are immediate. The next legislative valuation date is January 1st, 2019, which will be used for the taxation years 2021 to 24. This valuation date was recently changed from January 1st, 2020, and with this change, this allows MPAC more time to review sales of properties, engage with property owners to get the values right prior to the roll being returned, and this will reduce further the number of appeals and help to stabilize the assessment base. Whoops. Some slides disappeared. Sorry, I'm gonna go back. So this slide here highlights the 2017 assessment roll across the province and the various property portfolios. While this reflects the 2017 year in review, I like it because it details the different portfolios and the number of properties like farm, commercial, industrial, special and exempt, and multi-residential and residential, and it breaks down the properties by the different property types. So MPAC is responsible for providing property assessments to property owners in Ontario. We are made up of assessment experts to value those 5.3 million properties. These assessments support the collection of nearly $20 billion in municipal taxes each year and $7 billion in education taxes. This means that every $1 in MPAC's cost supports $100 in municipal property tax revenue. We understand how important our work is to you. We provide more than assessment. We provide a range of services that enable you to understand and employ these values. So what I've provided in this slide that I've popped up here is the provincial assessment base. The numbers on the chart we can discuss, but as you can see, provincially residential is both the highest number of properties and accounts for the highest total assessment value, followed by commercial properties, These two property classes account for 82.9% of the total value in the province. And then specifically looking at Wainfleet, what I've done is included this chart summary to show you the municipal data tables from the December 2018 Municipal Year-End Summary Report to illustrate the breakdown of property types for Wainfleet and how they compare to the total assessment portfolio. And this report was provided out through William to the councillors in December. And what does this tell us? It tells us that residential is both the highest number of properties and accounts for the highest total assessed value, followed by your farm properties and your exempt properties, and that the residential class carries most of the tax burden. What we also know is that it tells us that less than 2% of all properties in Wainfleet are actually business properties. And the aggregate of the total property values in Niagara Region accounts for only 4% of the total province. So also we provide 2018 year-end assessment reports. We provided these in December, like I said, and this report provides an update on the work MPAC has undertaken over the course of 2018 to support the municipal sector, meet service level standards, and deliver an updated and stable assessment role. The document also shares our plan for the next province-wide assessment in 2020. It includes this assessment summary change, update of the 2016 current value assessments, and the assessment-based distribution as it compares to the total of 2018 and 2019 phase-in assessments by property class. And this was detailed in the previous chart. You may or may not be familiar with MPAC's online application called About My Property for property owners who want to compare their property assessments with others in their neighborhood or municipality. It's both for residential and business properties. About My Property is a secure self-service application that provides property owners with the access to their property assessment information. And if you, as an elected official, encounter property owners who have questions about their assessment, we encourage you to direct them to About My Property. Here they can also see market trends, and they can file a request for reconsideration directly through here. As well, there's contact numbers. Should they have any questions, they can call us toll-free to talk to us. So for those unfamiliar property owners who do not agree with their assessed value or have an opportunity to ask MPAC to review their concerns for free, similar to the 2016 assessment update, property owners will have 120 days from the issue date of their property assessment notice to file a request for reconsideration with MPAC, and we will reply within 180 days. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Right on time. Questions from the councillors? No questions? Councillor McClone?
Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Cunningham, the new cannabis industry that's coming on, how will they be assessed?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, back out to the councillor, we're currently taking time to understand the regulations that have passed and identify through the municipalities, because there's a number of steps that the cannabis facilities have to go through bylaw changes and regulations. We're detailing an inventory, and our goal is to, once we have the inventory in place of the properties identified, because a lot of the cannabis operations they're establishing themselves into already existing structures on existing properties. So we need to, first of all, become aware of where they are and where they're operating. So we are aware in a lot of places where they are, and our plan is to go out and complete inspections starting in the next month or so through to the end of the year to gather that information and put them on and add them to our records.
Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you, Mayor. again, just a scenario, if it's not too specific. When residents perhaps decide to build a new, larger dream home and they tear down their older home on the old tax base, what are some things they can do to anticipate or calculate or estimate what their new impact rate might be? And is that something they would go to you for? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, out to the councillor. We have a business group that provides estimates, but there is a cost associated because that's outside of our core business. We assess the properties once they're complete and occupied, and we're looking at the details specific to the individual property, and there's a number of key factors that make up what we're looking for within each and every individual property. Certainly the size of the house, the quality of the construction, the lot and the lot size, and the amenities that make up the house. And all of those features are included in the total assessed value. And then it's based on what we would expect that property would sell for or realize as of our valuation date. So that's Jan 1, 2016 right now. So even if it's a new house, we're gonna determine a value once it's occupied and we have all the details based on that valuation date, but specific to that property.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor McClellan?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, on new houses that are built, how soon after would they expect to see their assessment and a tax bill? Because my understanding is they can't get a tax bill till there's an assessment.
That's correct. So through you, Mr. Mayor, back out to the councillor. We have service levels that are in place, and and one of the reports that we populate into our Municipal Connect that's available to city staff has to do with, relates to the timeliness of picking up new assessment. So we receive all building permits and we follow up on those building permits by inspecting or visiting those properties. So our service level is that we aim to pick up within 85% of all new construction within 1 year of occupancy. That's what our target is, and I believe for Wainfleet we achieved that this year.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to receive that report, please? Councillor McClellan, seconder. Councillor Gilmore, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Okay, moving on to the mayor's remarks. Last week I attended the Niagara Entrepreneur of the Year Awards. A very good experience to go and see that. Tomorrow evening I am going to the Empty Bowls fundraiser for Bethlehem Housing and Support Services. There's an information session taking place Tuesday, March the 12th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Wainfleet Firefighters Memorial Community Hall, and that's regarding the consolidated South Wainfleet drain. We're asked that the landowners assess to that drain, that you're notified and you're encouraged to attend. Coming up, we have the NPCA board, which I'm part of. Regional Council meets this week. Police Services Board also meets March 14th, and it's been a busy last couple of weeks, so, and more to come. So, okay, that's it for the mayor's remarks. And we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes.
That the minutes of the regular meeting of council held February 12, 2019 be adopted as circulated.
Have a mover for that? Councillor Gilmore, seconder. Councillor Quidlin, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we'll move on to admin staff report, ASR 007-2-2019. I'll ask Mr. Cross to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report in front of you is a bit of a housekeeping report stemming from the 2018 excuse me, Niagara Central Dorothy Rungling Airport Commission capital budget. As part of the 2018 budget request, the township, being a 7% owner in the airport, was required to contribute $12,000 for their capital projects that they were embarking on in 2018. What this report does is requesting council to approve a term loan associated with that $12,000 contribution. And this has been established the last couple of years because the region is looking to potentially upload the two airports in the Niagara region to the region, at which point the owners of these airports would want to be compensated by the region for the capital investments that we've done in recent years for these airports. So it's a bit of a, we're loaning them the money, they're paying it back to us, but we're loaning them the money to pay back to us kind of situation right now. But nonetheless, this is a requirement to ensure that all the four municipalities that have a stake in this airport all have the same terms, all of the same interest rates associated with those terms for these capital projects.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, then we'll have a mover on that. Councillor Van Vliet, seconder. Councillor McClellan, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, the next item is ASR 008-2019, the extension of the Integrity Commissioner contract. Any discussion on that? We brought it up at our last meeting there, and we had discussion on it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then staff's recommendation is that a report be received and that council approve the extension from April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2023 for the use of the Integrity Commissioner services through ADR Chambers, Inc. under the Regional Municipality of Niagara's request for proposal initiative. Have a mover for that? Councillor Gilmore, seconder. Councillor Cridlin, and all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we're moving on to BSR Building Report 004-2019. And our building officer, would you like to speak to anything there?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. The building staff report is a culmination of approximately about a year and a half of staff time assessing the request from council to determine whether we can separate the greenhouse factor out of the agricultural building sector. Our last request from council was to utilize a greenhouse project that we had underway to determine, or to help determine, what a new building fee should be, that should be established for greenhouses should be. So that in effect was taken over the last year and a half, and we've been able to since determine, based on a full cost recovery model, which was based on BMA Consulting's report, their methodology for determining how our fee should be established, and we came up with a fee structure based on $1,125 and change for the base structure for a greenhouse fee, and $1.21 per square meter in addition to that if the building size exceeds that 463 meters.
Thank you. Perhaps we could hear from Mr. Cross on this as well.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So, yes, so Randy's proposed fees based on this case study is the $1,125.76 for any greenhouse building up to 463 meters square. You'll notice that this is the same fee charged for any farm building that is requesting a permit. But once we get over the 463 meters squared is when other farm buildings and a greenhouse diverge. At this point, based on the cost to do the inspections of greenhouse specifically, due to their complexities versus the other projects, $1.21 per meter squared was determined to be our kind of break-even point with that. A couple of other things. So when we previously discussed this at the public meeting back in February, a cap was potentially proposed of $8,600. So you'll notice in the financial considerations here, under this fee structure that we're proposing today, the break-even point there would be 6,640 meter square property or greenhouse size. So anything over that, we'd actually lose money. So for this proposal tonight, we're removing the cap that was originally discussed. And the last sort of thing that I wanted to highlight on page 7 of the report in terms of the farm building project sizes. So you'll notice that there's one sort of outlier in this scatter plot of the types of projects that we've seen over the last few years. That is the greenhouse that we're doing the case study on. So it is very abnormal for the township, but having said that, across the Niagara region, there's certainly been an increase in large-scale greenhouse projects across the region.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Discussion? Councillor McCollum?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so this is for a 1 year, we're going to do an annual review of these fees?
Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McClellan. Yes, so we brought the fees back last council meeting for all fees and charges throughout the township, and the intention going forward is that this be brought to council every year. So we'll be reassessing our fees every year, whereas this last time we've kind of had a few years, so it's been since 2016 that we've evaluated all fees, but the intention going forward is to evaluate all fees. With respect to building permit fees, again, there's the 21 days notice that we're required to give, and we'll factor that into the annual review as well, so that the public has an opportunity to speak to any changes to those fees. But yeah, the intention is every year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Credlin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, also in terms of the full cost recovery, I know we're in an area where this is a cost recovery only situation, so can you talk just a little bit more about cost recovery? Because when I look at the chart where it compares us, and again, having only had one unit to build a report on, you've done a remarkable job, but when I see where we were placed amongst our peers in Niagara, as someone who's an analyst, it just raises way more questions on, you know, where we might be heading. This would suggest to me we're going to be heading upwards anyway when we get more scale to include in a study, perhaps. So can you talk about costs?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cridlin. When it comes to cost, we did have BMA perform a full assessment on our building permit fees back in 2012. So as Randy alluded to, we use this as sort of our starting point. With respect to costs, it includes not only the direct costs of Randy's time to review the permit applications, perform the inspections, do any follow-up inspections, and perform the closing of the permits, but it also includes the time of administrative staff that are dedicated to our building department, as well as indirect costs of the other departments that also contribute to building, in addition to the other costs that Randy requires as the CBO for the building department, so office supplies, access to a vehicle to perform the inspections, the fuel that goes with that vehicle, the maintenance. So those are all the costs that are factored in. With respect to time, we don't budget for 100% of the CBO's time to be utilized in evaluating permits. So that's where sometimes you'll see when we have years where we've earned more kind of than what was budgeted or forecasted for, it's because we have some time that we can dedicate to more projects than the average, because our fees are based on the average number of projects that we anticipate, and we typically look at a 4 to 5 year period of what kind of activity Wainfleet has during that time period to determine the cost. So that all has to get factored in. With this particular project, so for the first 463 square meters, our full costs are in that, as directed by the BMA kind of analysis. But then anything above that, it's purely our cost to do the additional inspection. So that $1.21 per meter square is our cost to travel to and from those inspections, the time to do the inspection, and the specific costs associated with that inspection. And I do agree that when you look at the chart on page 6, the proposed fee brings us to the second lowest in the region. There's one sort of kicker to that we couldn't really properly illustrate in that chart, is that Grimsby actually has a very low fee once they get into the extremely large greenhouse facilities. So you just have to drive down the highway to notice that they're getting lots of large greenhouses being built in their municipality. So that would suggest that the industries and businesses that are looking to build these large greenhouses are cost conscious and are evaluating kind of where they can potentially build for the cheapest, but without having the background to really see what that looks like, it's difficult to model that, because we only had 3 greenhouses in the last 3 years. So to forecast it out, which I think is back to Councillor McClellan's point of reassessing in a year, is important to see, because we'll know quite quickly if all of a sudden people are knocking at our door to build these large greenhouses, then we price ourselves too low.
Any other questions? So I just have a comment. I actually am concerned about this because the previous greenhouse fees were $2.19, and we're going down to $1.21. When I look at that scatter graph and I see that Wainfleet is by far the cheapest municipality in the region to bring a greenhouse into effect, it causes me concern considering some of the other battles that we're anticipating that we're going to be doing. And so I'm not sure if we want to be just the cheapest at $1.21. I think probably that should have some more discussion. And also the cap as well. I'm not sure what the purpose of the cap is. Somebody comes in and puts in a really, really large greenhouse. I feel that we're missing out on development charge money that we could certainly use. So if we reduce the rate from $2.19 down to say $1.50, something like that, that's still a huge decrease. Take away the cap, and that'll put us in the mid-range of everybody else. I just worry about being the cheapest greenhouses available in the whole Niagara region. So it's something to think about. So we may want to lift this out of the bylaw, the new fees, and take a look at it again. I don't know the feeling. Any discussion on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think Randy, this would be your question. Could we have 2 different fees for existing operational greenhouses as opposed to people who are coming in to build a new one? Do you know where I'm from?
Are you suggesting like additions versus brand new buildings?
Exactly.
Well, it depends on the type of, it depends on the way we want to process out our system for for pricing. I mean, you can create any kind of category, but you have to quantify what it is and make sure that it's, we're going to be able to achieve full cost minimum of full cost recovery with whatever category we break it out into.
What I'm getting at is because we're going to obviously be overwhelmed with, some operations we don't really want. But I don't want to impact the existing greenhouses. Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, is there somewhere we can do that, or is that?
Well, if we're planning on reevaluating this annually, then, well, I mean, we're not overrun with greenhouses greenhouses at the moment. So it shouldn't be too difficult to come back to this in the next fiscal year and determine whether or not we were where we should be, or whether we have to reevaluate this based on what's coming down the pike.
It's a good report. I'm just wondering if, I'm trying to not have those ones come in. So that's where I was going with that. But thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I tend to disagree with Mr. Cross because Grimsby's fees are so cheap. They have some of the most expensive land. We have the least expensive land in the Niagara Peninsula. We could charge 3 times the rate anybody else is, and it would still be cheaper to build here, right? And that's what is driving that is the accessibility to the highway to move their product. They are buying industrial land and paying farm taxes on it and beating the daylights out of the town of Grimsby and the region of Niagara and everybody else. And then when they sell that land 20 years from now, it's $2 million an acre industrial land, not $14,000 an acre farmland. And that's why they're building where they are. And they have a fantastic gas supply. I think those are the reasons they're building in Grimsby, Beamsville, Vineland area that the greenhouses are going up. This is my opinion and from what I've heard from others.
Any other discussion? Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to address your comment about the cap, I believe the report removes the cap. You can blame me for the cap. I was just responding to the initial problem of the greenhouse in the case study receiving a bill for $21,000, which seemed quite excessive. So, in order to get us to where we are today, that's where that came from. So, I'm comfortable with the report and thank Randy for the work and apologize for a lot of the extra work that this has generated. But I think we got to a good place, and we're going to review it every year, which we should be doing anyway. So I think we're in a good spot for this year, and I would move that we accept the recommendation.
Okay, we have a mover on that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McClellan, all in favor? Sorry?
Can I then make an amendment to that or propose an amendment to that once it's on the floor?
Yes.
Just because there's, again, concern that we're a target. If we could amend the report, only the $1.21, that we move up to where, at least we're with Lincoln for this first round. So we're not really in the bottom, we're up at least another step. That puts us for the next year, and then again, follow up with the 1 year. I think that builds in a little bit of contingency based on us only having the one property to review. So instead of being second last, we're in the pack with Lincoln, if that's considered friendly.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Van Vliet. And all in favor for that amendment? And that's carried. Okay, and now we will, can we have a motion to receive the report with the new amendment in it, please? Councillor, we're at the all in favor as point. All in favor? And that's carried.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the amended motion that was just adopted, the bylaw that is before you this evening does include the original $1.21 for those greenhouse operations. So when we proceed to the adoption of the bylaws this evening, we'll be adopting that bylaw as amended as well to represent the upping of the greenhouse fee.
Okay, moving to the drainage staff reports, DSR 004 2019 drainage program update. Are there any questions, discussion? Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you for the report. Thank you, Mayor. Could we just direct staff, could I make a motion to direct staff, it probably already happens, for a mid-year update on all this work?
Yes, I'll do that. Okay, can I have a mover for this report? A seconder, sorry, Councillor Van Vliet, and all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, planning staff report 001-2019. And that is the renaming of Side Road 20. Just before we get to that, I received a phone call today from the source of this request, the president of the Historical Society, and they felt that option number 2 was actually all they want. And they think that's an excellent idea there. So that laneway going into that complex with the name on it is exactly what they want. And so they weren't interested actually in Side Road 20 when we had the discussion with the president. So I think that, any discussion on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I also got an email from the same person, but I'm just wondering if we have a timeline of when that sign would be coming in once we...
And I look to Mr. Nan for that one.
Through your worship, to Councillor Van Vliet, we would first have to order the sign, and then we would have to get locates to actually dig it. And right now with the frost being there, it might be a little bit difficult, but we will attempt as quick as we could.
Okay, thank you, because I was wondering if we could coordinate with the Historical Society to do some kind of a ceremony for that.
That's an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we have a mover for this report, please? Councillor McClellan, seconder, Councillor Cridlin, and all in favor, and that is carried. Okay, moving to PSR, Planning Staff Report 002-2019, Interim Control Bylaw for Cannabis Production Facilities. Is there any discussion? Could I have a planning report on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So the township currently has zoning provisions regarding medical marijuana facilities, and that was started back in 2014 when medical marijuana licenses in terms of production were starting to come to Wainfleet. With the recent legalization of cannabis for recreational purposes, we continue to receive inquiries about using existing greenhouses and or potentially building new greenhouses for the growing of cannabis, not related to medical, but just cannabis in general. And since our bylaw only defines and has provisions for medical marijuana, it leaves us open to someone wanting to come in just for cannabis production facility. So because we need to make some modifications to our zoning bylaw, municipalities across the province are also looking at how to tackle this. So we're not alone in that, and there has been some substantial work from some other municipalities. So in my staff report, I'm recommending that I be directed to have a look at land use policies, both the existing medical marijuana and then policies going forward for cannabis in general. And that while this review is being undertaken, that an interim control bylaw be adopted. And that essentially would prohibit all cannabis-related development for a period of 1 year. And again, that just gives staff some breathing room and some time to have a look at potential regulations and get a zoning amendment before council for approval. So in my report, I've attached a draft interim control bylaw, and should council accept my recommendation this evening, we can put that bylaw on the next council meeting agenda.
Okay, any questions? One of the things I see in this report is the minimum distance setback being 150 meters. I've had many people speak to me that that is far too small of a distance. So that'll be something that we need to address in the future. So, okay, so the recommendation on this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the couple of issues I've had is the distance, the noise. Apparently they patrol these at night, 24 hours a day, so they don't get robbed. So we need noise control on this as well. And the lighting. You know, if you want to put lights on 2 hours before sunrise and 2 hours after, they go off 2 hours after sunset, maybe that's one way you do it, or your building should be close to lights so the neighbors don't get the light pollution. I don't know, maybe the setback needs to be 500 meters or 550 meters, and it's far enough away that the odor dissipates, but.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? Councillor Van Vliet?
Sir, I have a question. Do we have any any control over the existing grow-ops that are out there?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Van Vliet, we do have a number of properties that we're working through compliance with the current zoning regulations. There are a number of properties that have medical marijuana licenses. So we're working through compliance with them. So they received their license without checking township zoning bylaw. So we're, previously to this, we had been chatting with them and getting them to attend a pre-consultation meeting and eventually a zoning bylaw amendment application. The thing with the interim control bylaw is that the use has to be legally established. And so a number of those facilities in terms of township zoning, if they have a medical marijuana license, can't be deemed legally established because they don't comply with the current zoning bylaw. So we're having to work through navigating compliance with that. But certainly right now we are open. I'm not aware of any operation that is just doing has just a regular cannabis production license. Most of the properties that we've been dealing with are just medical marijuana currently under the ACMPR regulations. But it leaves us open to, if someone wanted to come in tomorrow and establish in an existing greenhouse, right now technically they can.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that point, we're working on bylaws, we're working on ways to control this. They're totally ignoring the whole thing, so they're just putting up the greenhouses and running. So we're actually have been in discussions about how are we going to take the next step and move the whole process forward so that we can bring those people into compliance. Medical marijuana licenses exist. There's not a problem that way, but they'd have to meet our bylaws. And so far, they're not doing anything. They're not even coming to get a license, like a business license. So we're going to look at that. One of the things on March 25th, we're having a town hall meeting, and that's going to be one of the topics that we're going to discuss at that town hall public meeting, is how do the residents of Wainfleet want us to start addressing this? Because it's going to cost some money to try to deal with this. Because there's no teeth to the bylaw to make them come and do what they have to do. So not when you're dealing with $1 million products that, so you get a $2,000 fine, it's nothing. So it's a bit of a dilemma. So we're very aware of it and working on it. So. Any other questions? Okay, so that make a recommendation that Planning Staff Report PSR 002-2019 be received, and that Council directs staff to undertake a review of the Township's land use planning policies and regulations pertaining to cannabis production facilities and cannabis-related uses, and to develop appropriate policies and regulations to manage and control cannabis production facilities and cannabis-related uses. And that Council adopt an interim control bylaw pursuant to Section 38 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP.13, as amended for a period of 1 year, with the possibility of extension, prohibiting all development pertaining to cannabis production facilities while the Township reviews its land use policies and regulations. We have a mover, seconder, Councillor Van Vliet, all in favor, and that is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to correspondence. Draw our attention to C-036 2019, number 36 in your package. And look to the planner for discussion on this, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. At the first Committee of Adjustment hearing for 2019, on the agenda, they have an other business item, line item on their agenda, and one of the committee members brought up the hearing start time. So as a direction from the previous council, it was changed from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock on every third Wednesday of the month. Committee members felt that 4 o'clock has been working for many years, and in fact, in January, with our first meeting at 6 o'clock, only the applicant attended. We had another hearing in February, and again, only the applicants. We had 2 applications on that agenda, and only the applicants attended. So the committee feels like the start time should be changed back to 4 o'clock. Instead of the 6 o'clock as previously directed. So this is correspondence from them requesting that change for council's consideration.
Thank you. And discussion? Mr. Cridlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to maybe make a comment, acknowledge certainly that the letter includes some appropriate facts on the matter, and that I won't be able to support it only because I'm leaning towards still continuing to be accessible. I know it's winter time, perhaps that's a bit of a barrier at 6 o'clock, but across Ontario, municipalities are moving more of these hearings outside of regular hours versus moving them earlier, so I'll just not be able to support this one.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll have a motion to receive this report. Councillor McClellan. Okay, so we need to have a motion to vote on whether we're going to go with the recommendation from the Committee of Adjustment. So it's either to 4 o'clock or keep it at 6. Can I have a motion? Okay, and the motion is to keep it as is at 6 o'clock or to move it to 4 o'clock? Okay, so the motion is to move it from 6 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Do we have a seconder on that? Councillor Cridland? Okay, all in favor of moving it to 4 o'clock? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, draw your attention to correspondence 050-2019, request from the Autism Ontario to make April 2nd World Autism Awareness Day and raise Autism Ontario's flag on that day, Tuesday, April the 2nd, 2019. Any discussion? Seeing none. I have a motion to move that, please. Councillor Van Vliet, seconder. Councillor McClellan, all in favor? And that is carried. And I draw your attention to correspondence C051, 2019, Community Services. Any discussion on that? Quite a bit there. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Have a motion to endorse that, please. Councillor McClellan, seconder. Councillor Cridland, and all in favor. And that is carried. And that's it for correspondence, unless there's anything else that anybody would like to speak to. Councillor Cridland?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk, could I pull out item number 52 from correspondence? It's the one received from the AMO, and it's just recommending or just outlining the issue with broadband in rural. Does there have to be a seconder to take it out of correspondence? Okay. So I'd just make a motion to direct staff to put a suitable message on social media in that regard.
Okay, can we have a seconder on that motion? Councillor Van Vliet, and all in favor? And that is carried. Any other correspondence to be spoken to? Okay, seeing none. And we'll move on to the bylaws.
That the following bylaws be read and passed this 5th day of March 2019. Bylaw number 10, 2019, being a bylaw to repeal and amend certain appointing bylaws. Bylaw number 11, 2019, being a bylaw as amended to reflect updated building permit fees for greenhouses and to establish and regulate payment of various fees and charges within the Township of Wainfleet, and repeal bylaw 5, 2016. Bylaw number 12, 2019, being a bylaw to appoint a drainage superintendent for the Township of Wainfleet pursuant to the provisions of the Drainage Act. Bylaw number 13, 2019, being a bylaw to adopt a post-traumatic stress disorder plan and supporting policies. Bylaw number 14, 2019, being a bylaw to authorize the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet to execute an amended site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet and 2390364 Ontario Inc. for lands known municipally as 43969 Highway number 3. Bylaw number 15, 2019, being a bylaw to close and convey part of a public road being part of Erie Street and part of Gallinger Street, designated as Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, 59R 16069, Township of Wainfleet.
Okay, can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor McClellan, seconder. Councillor Gilmore, and all in favor? And that is carried. Any notices of motion this evening? Okay, seeing none. Any other business? Okay, can I have a motion then, please, to move into closed session?
The council now move into closed session to discuss item under section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. One item, CIO appraisal.
And a seconder for that? Mover first, please. Councillor Quidlin, seconder. Councillor Gilmore, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.